The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is The Legend of Vox Machina, Season 2, brought to you by the good people at Metapigeon, Titmouse Incorporated, and Amazon Studios. The Legend of Vox Machina is an American adult animated fantasy action television series produced by Metapigeon, Titmouse Incorporated, and Amazon Studios, which premiered on the Amazon Prime Video on January 28, 2022. It is based on the first campaign of the Dungeons & Dragons web series Critical Role. In October 2022, ahead of the Season 2 premiere, Amazon renewed the series for a third season. The series has received widespread acclaim from critics and audiences, with praise for its animation, voice acting, action sequences, story writing, emotional weight, and faithfulness to the campaign. Yes, it has. Both seasons are 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. And joining me, he will not be told tonight to hold on like he was the first season. Ladies and gentlemen, your dungeon master and mine, Ronnie Adams. How do you do, sir?
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Remembering well. That's what I'm
Yeah,
doing good.
I try to keep my cool. Sometimes I don't. But I digress.
That was a fun show. And joining me because David comes on any damn podcast he damn well chooses. He has no podcast. He has all the podcasts and none of the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, from our Canadian studio, David Wright. How do you do, sir?
I am the alpha and the omega of podcasting, Mark.
That you are, my friend. That you are. All right. So I mentioned it before in my snarky way that we reviewed season 1, and I don't remember a whole lot of that review. I mean, I remember the gentle antagonism between you and Robert, but that was very much like me kind of just watching YouTube geek out over this show. And I watched it. I gave it a fair watch. And season 2, I wasn't gonna do again, because I cut back on all this stuff. But Ronnie Adams big time me. He was like, I feel like you owe me for Barbie, Radulich. I was like, not wrong.
You're not done. You still owe me after this too.
Oh my god. So I agreed to dedicate a night to this, and it actually floated all over the schedule there for a while. But here we are, season 2, to give it a full review. But David, you big timed yourself onto this show. Why, my friend? Why?
Well, I listened to part 1 and I thought, oh, that sounded like pretty good. So I started watching the show and was like, oh, I like this, so I'll talk about it.
Were you a big role-playing guy? Were you a Dungeons & Dragons kid?
Not really. By the time I sort of was exposed to the D&D world, or fantasy tabletop role-playing, whatever you want to call it, I'd kind of already got so much nerd stuff to do that I was just like, I don't have the time. Sorry. Like, just my plate is full, just this giant pile of nerd stuff on it, and I just don't have room for another spoonful.
As an adult, have you ever tried to play Dungeons and Dragons with another group of adults?
Not really. I've never really found the social group. So,
okay.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, you can find places like sometimes around town. Like I know that there's a couple of like nerd-esque stores near me where they have the Dungeons and Dragons night. Ronnie, this is like your milieu right here. This is your shit.
Yeah.
Speak on it, buddy.
when you said the social circle or whatever, yeah, is that what you said?
That's what he said. Just
That's
go.
a long day. It's a long day,
Mhm.
folks. You're about right. It does take it is a community that plays, but it really is it's a broad community of different people from different backgrounds and things like that. So there's always going to be somebody that you can, well, there there should be somebody that you can like bond with or understand at the table. But uh, I DM every other. Well, I DM and GM because those are that's my my little in my quotations there. At a shop here in Burlington called Multiverse and Multiverse of Burlington. And so on every other Saturday, I have a open table of Dungeons and Dragons. It's a one shot. The story is done, and at the end of the session. And if you don't want to come back, you don't have to. I mean, or if you want to, you can. Whatever.
Okay.
It's just it's not it's not a ongoing story like
I know that was
like
always
like
my
this.
thing was, the feeling like there was a time commitment. It's funny David mentioned that. He was like, I just don't have the time. And it's like, yeah, D&D was never for me, at least not when I played, was one of those things where it was a weekly thing. It was hours
Yep.
long, and
Yep.
it was all about leveling up your character. But you had to, it was like going to church. You had to have those, that hourly commitment, and life gets in the way, stuff happens, and you stop going, and then people are playing without you. Like, where were you during that campaign? In a closet somewhere.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
we left you. There's a lot of we left you at the tavern.
Yeah, exactly. You
so
walked off to pray. I don't know. If you're a
so everyone's like level 20 and you're still like level 5. You're like still shooting magic missiles if you're a wizard or some shit. And then it gets hard because then everyone's a certain level and they're doing that level campaign and you're not equipped to deal with it and die several minutes later, and then you just go drink or something.
Your DM was mean. I usually level people up with the group because they can't help if they can't be there sometimes.
Oh, you snooze, you lose.
Yeah, but there is a time commitment for that one day. I mean, I go from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock. But I mean, it could be 3 o'clock to 3:30 or whatever. There's always a break in between. And part of Dungeons and Dragons is always snacking. So there's always food. There's always a place to go. Burlington Beer Works is right next door to the game shop, and we are in a social district, so you can bring a drink over if you want. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it with how we do it there. But I've been into fantasy and books and series and movies since I was a kid. And when I discovered Dungeons and Dragons, I was like, I can do this, and I can just play this character and not be me for a couple hours every week. That'd be great. So that's where I fell in love with it, and then I didn't play for a long time, and then I hate to say it, but when Stranger Things came out, I was like, why am I not playing this still? So, and that's where I picked it back up again. Only I wasn't really welcome at the table that I was trying to play at.
Wait, now I'm more interested in this. Why were you exiled?
Oh, it was a closed table. It was a closed table that was that they were trying to keep their table going at the game shop by saying, "Oh yeah, we're an open table," blah blah. But they would just stare at you until you left if they didn't know you.
I love that in every aspect of life, no matter how nerdy, no matter how weird, there's always still gatekeeping.
Oh, absolutely.
Get out of here, nerd.
Major gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Fuck? Yeah, exactly. So I walked.
And then they'll complain about how nobody wants to join in and they're running out of new blood.
Right.
Why don't we have any friends? Get out of here, you fucking asshole. What the hell?
I walked up to the gate. I walked up to the store owner, and I said, "Hey, do you need another DM?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Do you want one that has an absolutely open table that doesn't matter?" And she goes, "Absolutely." I said, "Does it have to be Adventurers League or whatever they're playing back there, which is a certain set of rules for Dungeons and Dragons that it's dumb. I hate it." And she goes, no, it doesn't. And I said, okay, give me 2 weeks. And that's where I started DMing, and I haven't stopped since. That was about 6 years ago.
The nice thing about the Legend of Vox Machina, David, is how much, the fantasy genre is rich with all kinds of stories, good, bad, and indifferent, from decades, just the high fantasy of Tolkien, and, the to like the 80s movies of, silly things like Beastmaster, or, like Labyrinth.
Beastmaster silly.
Just stay with me. Crawl, that kind of a thing. High fantasy can be all kinds of, it can go all over the place, can be all kinds of stories, but essentially it's always, I think it always works best where it's like an ensemble, and there's a great evil, and and you have this group that has to go on a quest to get a thing to fight the evil and save the town. I mean, if you had to kind of pick a structure for high fantasy, that's usually how it goes. And I would say Legend of Vox Machina very much hangs a rich story on that very basic, very familiar structure. What do you think?
Yeah, I think sort of the D&D thing is sort of permeated through pop culture anyway. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of things that, someone who actually plays D&D knows that someone who doesn't. It'd be, to draw a comparison to, Star Trek, my thing is, it's like most people understand raised shields, fire photon torpedoes, Vulcans, Klingons, right? Like,
right.
You could never have seen any Star Trek. You kind of know those things. But of course, if you talk to an actual Star Trek fan, then they would actually go into a lot more detail, and then everyone would run away.
That's when the eyes start crossing.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I've seen enough fantasy shows, movies, video games that I think D&D has had a great influence on, I would assume. So yeah, like you can go into, I think, Vox Machina and still sort of understand. It's a fantasy world. It's a high fantasy world, and then maybe there'll be more in jokes that you would get with more of a background, like how doors are so incredibly difficult to open.
Yeah, that's but I think was that Chris Bailey that just popped up on the screen there?
Yes.
Chris, that was you said that you just described Conan the Destroyer, which honestly on its own is an amazing D&D campaign story from the campaign. Like, it's not an actual campaign, but it could be.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. Now the door you mentioned that they tried to open comes straight from one of their sessions. They rolled so many natural ones and failing savings just to try to open a door. It was hysterical. Everybody was in tears.
There's a part of me that's like, come on, everyone can open a door, except that I have seen people struggle with what the fucking opening a door.
I've struggled with sitting in a chair.
So let's get into season 2 of Legend of Vox Machina. This is the Chroma Conclave story arc. Ronnie, what is the Chroma Conclave story arc? And was this a faithful adaptation of that gameplay story, or was there a lot of creative license here?
There's not a lot of creative license, but there's always going to be some, especially with an actual play streaming show like that. There's a lot of side talk and everything. You have to kind of lace everything together to make it make sense. So some people, well, what about this joke and all about that? Well, suck it up, because that's not how stories are told a lot of times. But it was pretty faithful. And the Chroma Conclave is actually, there's a wonderful bit of backstory with that, because in Dungeons and Dragons, now, Matthew Mercer, who is the dungeon master for Critical Role and literally performs almost every other voice in this cartoon, this animated series, he's a phenomenal voice artist, voice actor. In fact, the entire play group, the cast of Critical Role and the cast of the main characters of Vox Machina are all voice actors in anime and video games and everything. But in D&D lore, you have all your dragons are different colors. So the evil dragons are all chromatic dragons. So it's red, green, white, blue, and black. So, and those 5 make up Tiamat, the evil dragon goddess. She has 5 heads and 1 body, and so that was the Chroma Conclave. So the chromatic dragons are the conclave that join together, and they normally hate each other, that joined together to take over this land, to rule and destroy. So it's I mean, it was a really cool concept. In fact, if you remember in season 1, they killed a blue dragon that was disguised as a person. That was one of the. I mean, like if you watch 2, you find out. If you watch season 2, you find out that was a member of the Chroma Conclave. So they're only working with 4 in season 2 because they've already killed 1 member. And the red dragon, who was the leader, was actually voiced. I can't remember all my names right now. But oh shoot, what is his name? The actor.
Just keep going, Ronnie.
I'm
We'll come
sorry.
back.
Yeah, but wonderful voice. Wonderful actor. I apologize, guys. I am, kind of flying by the seat of my pants because I've lost all my notes. Lance Reddick plays.
Oh,
Thordak.
really? Lance
Yes.
Reddick is Thordak?
Yes, Lance Reddick is Thordak.
Thordak. Thordak is from the She-Ra cartoon.
Well, I mean, if you look at some of the voices in here, you got Carrie Payton, Gina Torres from we know her from Firefly and Serenity, Stephanie Beatrice from
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Darren DePaul, Stephen Root, Will Friedle, who was Rory McCann. If you're familiar with him, he actually was in Game of Thrones as Sandor. It was. I mean, there's a Dominic Monaghan. There's a lot of big names in this that have helped bring this to life. But yeah, the Chroma Conclave is a wonderful story. I was really super excited when they decided they were going to do this.
So we're gonna jump around a little bit, but you're fine. The season 2 ends where they fight off the dragon, they save the town, but the Chroma Conclave is still out there. I think somebody turns on them. I just finished watching this. I think somebody turns on them at the end, and they're like, okay, well, the day is won, but the war is not over, essentially, is how season 2 ends. How far into the campaign are we as far as
Not far.
Okay.
Yeah, not far.
It's
the
interesting.
campaign actually lasted about 5 years.
Good God. That's how did I mention before that Dungeons and Dragons is a bit of a time commitment?
Maybe a little more than halfway, or right at half, or something like that. There's a lot of stuff that a lot of, we'll call them beach episodes that you miss when you adapt it to TV. But maybe I can't remember, because there's a lot of backstories with all the different characters he hits on through this campaign. There's the vampire couple from the first season. First season or second season?
God, you said that. All I could think of was Castlevania.
Yeah. I know. Briarwoods. There's that arc. There's all kinds of stuff that happens in this first campaign that they have to go into.
So there's plenty of material, for more
so
seasons of this show. Like, as long as people are watching,
that comes in there.
As long as people are watching and they continue to greenlight seasons of this, they got plenty of story to get through just in the Chroma Conclave.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got about 4 or 5 seasons at least.
Wow. So, Dave, what did you said you watched the first season, you really liked it, you heard us talk about it. You're like, okay, this is something I could get my teeth into. What did you think of season 2?
Season 2, I mean, it was more of season 1, bit more epic, more things to do, bit more character work. I kind of like how we got a bit more from the rest of the group, where season 1 was very Percy focused.
Yeah.
Whereas Percy didn't have a lot to do in this season, but I was okay with that, because again, he kind of had most of his he had a lot of arcing to do in the last season. So it was nice to see some of the characters sort of get to develop their arcs a bit more. Sort of they had, I think, 3 or 4 of them kind of had their own sort of mini arc to sort of level up or through and self-actualize a bit more.
Yeah, I like the first couple of episodes, I'm not gonna lie, it was a Thursday night. It was the first Thursday night I didn't go out in like months. So I was actually home and watching, and I was paying attention, but I was definitely distracted, and I kind of got a gist of what was going on. My second sit down and watch through it, it was about where Grog is dealing with the Ring of Doom. I mean, the Sword of Doom, or whatever the hell it was called, the evil talking sword. Like,
Yeah, I was so hoping they were just going to do like Grog is just too much of a numbskull to really understand the sword. So throughout the whole series, you have the sword. Come on, kill them, let me drink their blood. It's like, someone to say something.
Right?
And just the sword getting more and more desperate and annoyed.
Utterly frustrated sword. It's like, oh my god.
Just
so
this idea
dumb.
of having like some sort of magic, malevolent, evil, high-powered object, but just the person carrying it is just too much of a simpleton to really to have any effect on.
That would have been good.
The funny thing about Grog's character is he's like he's low intelligence, high wisdom.
Yeah.
So he's world wise, but he's dumb as a rock. And the guy that plays him is actually the CEO of Critical Role LLC.
Yeah.
So
I make no mistake. I love Grog, but
yeah, Grog's he's a great character that has a lot of layers, and people don't realize that. And I can't wait for them to get a little deeper into him as it goes along.
I like that they Superman tiered him here. Where he where the sword gave him great strength and power, but it was also corrupting him and making him a murderer. And so he finally, and when it tries to get him to kill Kaylee, Cooley D, Pike. That's her name.
Pike.
Cool. I was close.
When did it Kylie?
Shut up. It's the other Kendra's name. Scallon's daughter. Just watch that episode.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So anyway.
we'll get to that.
Yeah. So when Grog goes to kill Pike, he is, of course, overwhelmed by his affection for this person in his life, and he can't make himself do it. So instead, he kind of Dark Empires. I don't know if you remember this from the Dark Empire comics, but the Emperor's in Luke's head. He's turned to the dark side. He's like, kill her already, kill, and finally, he's like Luke. Just like I think he takes out like an Emperor clone or something like that. He ends up not killing Leia. Obviously, it was one of those deals where like I have to do something with this energy, and so instead he just like wails a rock at the sword. It's like, what are you doing? And it was funny because we were joking about like what if the sword was like utterly frustrated with him in that moment, not able to get Grog, not even get this toaster oven, this simpleton to do what he needs him to do, and he's like, oh no. This wild man, this beast, is about to break me in half. I'm gonna die. It was a good scene. But then, what I liked about what comes next over that course of that story is, I like the inner turmoil that Grog goes through. If I don't have my strength, if I'm not able to beat people senseless, if I'm not able to be a warrior, then who am I? What use am I? And I like that because that's something that everyone can relate to. They're like not necessarily like the warrior element to it, but if you take away the thing that I think most defines my character, what else is there to me? And I think at one point or another, we all kind of go through that where if I don't have, especially as you age, from youth to adulthood to, middle age and then, elder adulthood, your body starts failing you in different ways. There's just things you can't do anymore. Like, well, who am I without these things? And you have to sort of like redefine yourself, hold on to that sense of self. And I like that for him because he's sitting there like, and it's like, because it's a cartoon, but it's also an adult cartoon and they're trying to keep the story moving. They can't spend too long on it, but he is definitely having that, like, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm literally a crumpled mess of muscles that have atrophied. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how useful I can be. Just throw me off a cliff. And Pike's like, no, there's more to you than muscles and swords. You are, a sweet, kind, loyal person, and that's valuable in and of itself. And she sort of helps Grog sort of redefine his role in this group. So I really like that story. The other thing that's going on in that whole sequence is, and boy, tell me if you've ever been there, if you've seen this happen. You have a scamp, Scallywag and Scanlan. He's just as an aside. So I tend to forget this is an adult animated feature. And
maybe I should swear more.
Well, I was thinking about like the Orville. Like it's so funny to see like this fantasy, whether it be science fiction or high fantasy, but this like fantasy world where everyone's just like, yeah, fuck that guy. Like, all right, it kind of takes it takes me out of it a little bit, but you know, but if I can accept it in the Orville, I can accept it in Vox Machina. But the other side of that is you tend to think high fantasy is more pure than it really is. But you know, sex has been a part of the human existence since man and woman laid together, and whatever kinky shit man and woman have done, they've been doing it for centuries. I hate to tell you. And so there we have Scanlan in a bed in just his underpants, and he's about to get it on with what he doesn't know is his daughter. And
Yep.
she's tied him to the bed, and he's just like, ooh, bondage. And I was like on my phone at the time, and I kind of looked up and like, what kinky BDSM bullshit is this in my high fantasy show? And then I think he says something, and then he's like, there's something else related to, you know, BDSM in there, and I'm just like, what the fuck, man? But yeah, he, you know, Scanlan has this, you know, inner, you know, this thing in him that he can do the right thing. He can be noble. He can make the sacrifice. He just doesn't because it's more fun to be a ne'er-do-well. And then you have Pike, who's like, can we level up just a bit? Can we be a little bit more of an adult here? Can we be a little bit more noble than what you are? And Scanlan's like, I will rise to the challenge, but also my dick, eh? And she's like,
Yeah.
I can't even with you.
Look at this.
And it's like she wants to like him. She wants to like him, but she can't make herself like a guy that's just like, dick, what do you think? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, I think they're doing the thing where like there is that sort of Scanlan who wants an actual like adult relationship, like an emotionally deep and you know, rewarding relationship. But then there's a sort of Scanlan playboy that keeps.
I was gonna say not the adult relationship where he gets tied to the bed. It's a whole other adult relationship.
Yeah, but I think I think we're going to get something in the future. Like I haven't seen the future Critical Roles where we sort of learned that, you know, it almost seems like a defense mechanism of, you know, I don't want to. There's a part of him that doesn't want that, and you see that where him and Pike have these nice little, you know, exchanges where it seems like they're getting close, and then he'll make some sort of crass innuendo joke, and then Pike will just be like, ugh, you know, like, you know, the moment's gone, and then she wanders off.
It does.
So
it does, I think, speak to like the natural pull and push between men and women, doesn't it? You know, guys can just be like that, but also some of them think that that's how they think that that's what women want. It's like, I don't want to get too much on a tangent about this, but just a minute. I do think that this was written with a lot of love and care about how men and women interact with each other. Because forgetting for a moment that Scanlan and Pike are two little Kenders, and you know, in a fantasy world, they're a man and a woman, and it's like they're kind of all
gnomes.
With who gives a fuck, you nerd? I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from.
Hey, no. Kinder and gnomes are two different races in D&D. I'll get over yourself.
Mark, you knew this was a D&D based podcast, and yet you said yes. Like, you know, don't hate the players, hate the game.
I'm sitting here talking about the natural interplay between men and women in relationships, and he's going, well, technically, they're gnomes. I'm like, ugh, it doesn't matter.
Well, get it right.
Not technically, they are gnomes. Get it right.
You're a gnome. Anyway, so anywho, yeah, I think it's interesting that they took time out of this like high fantasy story to really just kind of play around with the idea of men and women sometimes don't speak the same language. God knows they're trying, and it's a very men are from Mars, women are from Venus kind of a thing.
The fact about the thing about Scanlan is Sam Riegel, the guy who created the character and voices him, super talented guy. Literally, that was a character that was to be a one-off for a birthday party one-shot. And they finally, he was like, I don't want to play Dungeons and Dragons. And they said, come on, just play. He goes, all right. What's the worst race in Dungeons and Dragons? Yeah, and they're like, his friend who plays Vaxen, and he goes, probably a gnome. So I'll be a gnome. He said, what's the worst class? He said, probably a bard. I'm a gnome bard. And he literally went to the player's handbook, picked out Scanlan Shorthalt from the book, and said, that's his name. Rolled up a character and turned it into this.
Mhm.
and it's a character with depth and uh, with so much. Oh my gosh, so much going on in this character. I want to say things, but I don't know if they're actually going to go into this because there
Go
was a
ahead.
point where the arc of his story got so emotional, he had to take a break from the character and brought in a different character that he wanted to try. And throughout the campaign, or for a short time in the campaign, and it's so good to see that they're actually taking that part of Scanlan seriously. I mean, like his daughter and the way he feels, yeah,
Mhm.
he's like this horny little gnome that wants to bang everything, but he actually has different layers to him. That if you peel that back, he's actually somebody who's hurting and looking for family.
But I think that's a very relatable thing for, we'll just say
Oh,
guys for right
absolutely.
now. I think a lot of
Yeah.
guys, they want to project an air of masculinity, an air of invulnerability. They've also seen other guys do that, and women respond positively to it, for better or for worse. And so there's a lot of guys sort of like
Right.
climbing all over each other to show, just how manly they can be. But deep down inside, like, a lot of guys are vulnerable, and they want to be loved. They want a relationship, and they want to be seen. They want to be heard. And it's hard because like I'm doing the thing that I think I'm supposed to do to get the attention that I want, and then you get the attention, and the girl goes, "You seem like you're dumb as a rock, and I'm not really into this." And
Yeah.
like, I did everything I was supposed to do. I did everything I see other guys that are successful with women do. Why isn't this working for me? And but that's the other thing is then there's the struggle within women that go, I want the bad boy, but I want the sensitive boy, but I want the bad boy. I don't know what I want. I gotta stop, or I'm gonna start saying some snarky shit. But so
Yeah.
it there's a lot of like banging of heads between men and women as they try to communicate with each other in languages the other one doesn't understand, right, Dave?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting development. Or yeah.
Clearly,
But you kind of just work it out.
Clearly, I was much more into that part of the story than you guys were. So
yeah, I think you read into it a bit more. More of this, but that's good. Yeah.
I'm enjoying seeing what you took from it because I mean, like honestly, just like
I'm
any
gonna
other
tell you
story,
right now,
people
I
take
can't
different
get into the minutia of like the fantasy stuff. But then it was actually someone who was explaining to me like what's the difference between the way I do my podcast and the way Alexis does it. I said Alexis likes to talk about the geeky bullshit. I don't. I wanna talk about
right.
the more thematic elements. I don't want to talk about the minutia of how starships work. So that stuff.
Right.
So the relationship between a man and a woman did jump out at me. I couldn't get into a
Yeah.
lot of the other stuff. I haven't played Dungeons and Dragons. I'm in fucking high school, first of all. And second of all, like I don't know, I've never watched Critical Role. So a lot of this stuff was like, again, this could have very easily been any number of other fantasy things. I would not have even registered with me. But
Absolutely.
that's
No, and it's interesting to see what you somebody who's not a fan of any of his stuff, or
Mhm.
I don't want to say not a fan, but who just hasn't watched it. It wasn't one of those things that piqued your interest right away or anything like that.
Mhm.
But you're getting stuff out of it that I could see this, and for better or for worse, I've kind of seen what happens here twice, but
Mhm.
to one retelling as that's a little different than the first. But it's interesting, and I've always loved to see what people take away from a story like this that started with a bunch of guys and girls just sitting around a table rolling dice.
So Dave, what elements of the story jumped out at you? If I could, like as I fight for time on yet another Radulich podcast, what is the one thing you wanted to talk about uninterrupted?
Ooh. I'm not trying to say there was one thing in particular. It's just sort of as a whole, how the show sort of just works by, yeah, like you say, it takes. I mean, I don't want to belittle D&D because again, I haven't played it that much or at all. But yeah, how it takes something you would think is just like, okay, yeah, it's like a bunch of dwarves and gnomes with swords and magic missiles and all that stuff, and actually weaves in this sort of like good character work in all of that.
Mhm.
And I kind of like that bit where was it Vex, like when he becomes basically like the the champion of death, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and he's kind of like struggling with this whole like now I am like I am the servant of death now, and he's just talking there with Stanlin, and it's like you seem down. It's like, yeah, you too. What's going on? It's like, oh, I just found out that I'm like I've created an eternal alliance to be the champion of death in the universe. What about you? Oh, I just found out I had a daughter. Yeah, you win.
Ah!
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, like but yeah, you do see how there is a deeper side to things, and some of it's a bit predictable, like the whole Sphinx battle, where it's the first one of you to make me to hurt me. I'm like, okay, Scanlan's gonna sing a song and make him cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it works. Like sometimes the classics are classics for a reason. And
I was gonna say, I remember years ago they had built up Cowboy James Storm in TNA, and like everyone just knew he was going to win the World TNA Championship.
Shut up, nerd.
That's not nice. I don't do that to you.
What?
So they built it up, and they were like, surely James Storm is going to win the TNA title, and then they didn't do it, and everyone was like, what the fuck? And the explanation was like, well, we didn't want to just like do the obvious. It's okay. Luke can blow up the Death Star. It's fine. We are all very comfortable and very much enjoy the predictable when it's done well.
Right.
What about you, Ronnie? What elements of season 2 you're like, if I have to talk about this with Radulich, or I will just simply die?
I'll be honest with you. I'm just glad, as far as this goes, I'm just glad it's getting a little bit of airtime and a little bit of recognition on the show. But the fact, I just like talking about all of it, to be honest with you.
Great, pick something. Go.
Yeah, I know, right? He kind of took my favorite part was with Grog.
Okay.
Because such a simpleton that has such I don't want. It's not unique. It's not. You've seen it time and time before, but they do it so well.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, he doesn't have a clue where his strength comes from, or what he's fighting for, and then it comes to a realization that no, he has his friends, and that's where he draws his strength, and that's who he's fighting for and fighting with. And then through the animation, you see him get his strength and his stature back, and then he just I think it was was it Vax that took him up high enough to drop him so he could cut his uncle in half, and then reclaim the Titan Stone Knuckles. And it was just one of those things that was like, he's one of my favorite characters in the whole show. One of three maybe. And just to see that they did a really good job with his story and showing him being a multi-layered character instead of just the buffoon that hits things really hard. It really that I like that, because just like you said, in all of our lives, we've hit that confusing spot where we don't know what we're doing, where we're going, or what we're fighting for, and then that revelation hits us of, okay, this is who I am, and some earlier than others, and sometimes some not at all, but you have that revelation of this is who I am, and it was really cool to see. It was one of those moments where, like, I'm not gonna lie, I got a little misty-eyed over an animated series.
It's okay. It's okay to get emotional about this stuff. One of the other elements that jumped out at me that I was paying close attention to and actually grabbed me as a viewer, and this is yet another thing I could relate to, was when the elves meet their father in like the Feylands, whatever.
Oh yeah.
And the father's just riding their ass. And you have the one brother who's like, fuck you. And she's like trying to calm him down. Like, don't do it.
Yeah.
And then she's just like, you know what? I'm sorry I bothered you. Like, clearly coming to you for help was a mistake. I'll just do this myself. And like, I can't remember like what he says. That he said something about helping them, but it's not like really what they needed. But just that idea of all you want is your father's approval, and it's impossible. Your father just thinks you're a fuck up. I was like, okay, there, you could definitely see in the development of this story, whether it be through the actual D&D campaign or through the narrative of this feature, that there's a lot of people's own, I think, personal experiences and feelings that they're projecting into the series that are turn around that we're all to one degree or another that we can all relate to. So I really I enjoyed that whole sequence. And then when she goes to get the bow from the tree demon thing, whatever he is, that was the other really funny thing. I'm watching this, and again, especially as of late, I'm really into like relationships between men and women, and so he's saying things to her like, "You need me," It's like we like trying to gaslight her and like get her to believe that like, listen, I understand what your needs and wants are, but you're better served if you're just an appendage of mine. And she, of course, resists it and ends up stabbing him in the heart like a woman does. And
that felt like that could have been part of like a much longer series.
Yeah, that whole bit, right? Just a whole the marriage story between Vex and Tree Demon dude. But I liked it. I liked that whole sequence. How she gets the bow, and then having to confront the dad, and the dad kind of just hurt his soul to have to give his children any kind of approval. What'd you think of it, Dave?
Yeah, I think the dad was basically like, fine, I'll help you out, but just to get rid of you as soon as possible.
Right. Yeah. Everything you people touch brings chaos and terror, and I don't want you here.
Yeah, but sometimes it's nice when things don't always wrap up cleanly, because things don't always wrap up cleanly. Like if you watch the like 2003 Battlestar Galactica reboot, there's sort of two characters, Starbuck, like the hotshot pilot, and Colonel Ty, the like second in command of the ship, and they're just at each other's throats, like you're insubordinate and a threat to loose cannon. Your ego's right and checks your body can't catch. She's like, yeah, well, you're an old drunken fool who's going to get a bunch of people killed, and then everything goes to shit, and like there's big battles, and Starbuck does death-defying flying stuff, and at the end of the episode, like Ty goes in and is like, I never understood what the old man saw in you, but after seeing you fly, I understand. And what do you say? Bygones be bygones. And Starbuck just goes, no, I still think you're an old fool who's going to get us all killed. Like just just that kind of like sometimes it just doesn't work out. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's a good show. But
I believe you. That's kind of all I had that jumped out at me as far as the show. I mean, the only other thing I was going to talk about was the conclusion. It all kind of leads. They're getting vestiges. They have to get these gauntlets. They have to get a bow. They have to get all these things to deal with these dragons, because dragons are almost impossible to kill. So they need extra.
The dragons are so overpowered in this show.
Yeah,
like even I kind of got like, oh come on, like that would have done something.
So yeah, it's
okay. Well, I was about to
go
full D&D nerd on you again.
No, go ahead, Ronnie. Please, go D&D nerd.
They are considered ancient dragons. So there's different level. There's different dragons. There's wormlings, which are babies, and you got young, and then adult. Adult are normally supposed to be like the normal dragons that you're used to seeing in other movies and stories and things like that. The ones that the knight can slay and things like that. These are ancient dragons that are hundreds and maybe 1,000 years old, that have gathered powers and magic, and dragons are very vain creatures as well. So the more wealth they amount, they love to sit on dragon hoards, like mountains of gold and gems and stuff like that. So go ahead, say what you need to say.
Nope. I have been way too snarky and way too jokey about my personal life, so I'm gonna leave the jokes about all dragons are narcissists alone.
I just want to see like a dragon that understands economics for once.
Go on.
Like the dragon's going like you know what? we're dragons, right? We like to sit on big piles of gold, and that's fine. The problem is, if you take all the gold away from people, they don't have any more gold to give you. And then when you kill people, there's no more people to acquire more gold for you. Like
Well,
you
you
just
gotta
if you
look
have
at
a bit
the,
of patience, you can have a steady stream of gold instead of just all of the gold and then everyone's dead.
Well, can we talk about that for a second though? Because every dragon that I've ever
Yeah.
met, they have their horde, and then they're just like, oh, I have my horde now. I have like I made the crack about dragons being narcissists, but narcissists are never satisfied. They always need more. They always need new supply, right? But I don't even know if that's true about dragons, because dragons will get a horde, then they have their horde, and they're like, well, this is fine. I'm good with what I have. I don't need more than this. I can roll around in my horde like Scrooge McDuck, and I don't need to bother the townspeople anymore. Let them muck about in their mud. I've got all the gold I need. So, your point about like, does a dragon need to understand economics? No, a dragon needs to go, I have my nest of gold. I'm satisfied. I can now be at peace with the world. That's how I see dragons.
Yeah, I would just be like, okay, guys.
Because they're never satisfied.
Yeah, okay, guys, here's the deal. You guys work, you make all the gold, and you give me all the gold, and you keep on doing that. And in exchange, if anybody messes with you, I will murder them. Like, I am your defense policy.
Yeah.
I think you're asking a lot of dragons. They are not concerned with the lives of the hoi polloi humanity. There's like, they have their nest of gold. They have their horde. They're not asking them to bring, like, this isn't a thing like, oh, I want more gold. I want more gold. It's, I have the gold I need to feel satisfied in life. Like,
but they're always asking for more gold. Like, that's the whole point.
For more gold.
Every dragon I know is like a bear. They have their horde and they just sleep on the gold. Ronnie, help me out here, Ronnie.
How many dragons do you know?
How long have I been dating now? Never mind.
Snacky.
Help me out here, Ronnie. David's point of view is that dragons are always, they always hunger for more, but I don't see where that's
these
true
dragons do.
In the literature that I've perused. I think dragons are wow. I don't think we've ever killed time like this on any podcast. I don't think I've ever seen dragons ask for more gold. They're perfectly content with the ones they have.
Well, have you watched this show?
Not really.
Like every episode, they cut away to the Chromatic Conclave, like the head dragon going, where's my tributes? Like, we've given you all we have, then burn.
But I thought that was so that he could get out of the dimension that he was in. Like, they needed X amount of shit so that to get him through get his fat ass through the door so that he could be in the real world and be a real boy. That's what I thought was happening there. I didn't think it was about like, I just want to be like, rich or something. It was, I need more of this stuff to get me through the door. Help me, Ronnie. What's going on here?
Wow, this is really the best time. Yes, this is the best discussion that's ever happened on this show. That's sad. You're both right. You're both
very diplomatic.
I'm serious. He does no. He does need to. They need a certain amount, but in everything, every game I've played, everything that I've read, dragons are always looking for more. They're looking for tribute. They're greedy creatures. The ones that are the evil ones. Like in D&D lore,
I'm basing my entire thesis on just one dragon and making it sound like I know more than one. But Smog seemed very happy. Wasn't looking for gold. He was looking for the ne'er-do-well boys to save from hillbillies.
That's weird. I'll never watch that again now that you said that.
What happened?
But okay, so I guess I can't switch off my nerdy D&D brain because as for the 5 evil dragons, there are like the chromatic dragons. There are the metallic dragons, which are good dragons. Gold, bronze, copper, and then you have your gemstone dragons. Emerald, sapphire, Yeah. Seriously, dude. There's all kinds of crazy
I'm
dragons out there.
I'm aware of this, but like the
but
more you talk about this, like it's like I'm afraid like some football player is gonna run into my almost 50, but I'm afraid some football player is gonna run into the room and like shove me in a locker.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen, buddy. Trust me, I won't let it happen.
I'm like waiting
I'll
for the
get
Doctor
shoved in the
Strange
locker
portal.
for you.
I'm like, waiting for the Doctor Strange portal to open up. Get in there, nerd. What the hell?
Get in there, nerd. But I mean, like you've got good dragons to cancel air to this yin and yang between the good and the bad dragons, and
Okay.
the good dragon god is Bahamut, and then you've got Tiamat, his exact opposite, and that's why I can't. That's why you're both right, because there are some that are satisfied, then there's some that are not, and it's just yeah. I play too much D&D.
Okay, so we're almost at an hour here, and my brain hurts. So, Dave, is there anything else you would like to discuss about this show?
No, I mean, if you like the first season, you'll like the second season. It's got more of the first, just with more depth and development.
Yep.
All right, Ronnie, this is your time, baby. You asked for this show. I gave you a whole hour. What is left unsaid that needs to be said?
I'm just going to go with I've really enjoyed this story. I enjoy what they're doing with it, with the animation, with how they're writing it. These characters have a lot of depth, and there's a lot of love put into. There was a lot of love put into them in the game, so that's why they have so much input in this series of how their story arcs and everything go. It's just the game aside, the roots of the show aside, it's just a fun show that hits on the stuff that I've loved since I was a kid. The fantasy, the Lord of the Rings, dragons, and magic, and everything. I was a Dragon Slayer kid. I watched that movie so many times, and Lady Hawk and all this other fantasy terrible movies that were just so awesome to me as a kid, and seeing that they're not just bypassing this as just a bunch of nerds who played a game. No, there is a wonderful story to be told with rich, vibrant characters that have layers to them, and that has been turned into a comic book series, and they're writing books about it and everything else just from a game of Dungeons and Dragons. So that's why I enjoy this. I think they're doing a great job with it.
All right. Well, that is our review, such as it was, and our in-depth discussion on the nature of dragons. Boy, that's going up on TikTok. Tomorrow, Robert Winfrey and I will be discussing Saw X, and then later in the week at noon, Sean and I are going to get together and do another director focus. This time we're looking at Jordan Peele, and we're looking at his trio of horror movies, Get Out, Us, and Nope. So that'll be this week. Also, Alexis Hana will be doing a TV party for One Piece, the live action. Dave, I think you're on that, aren't you?
Yep.
Terrific.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yep.
What?
Have you enjoyed it so far?
Yes.
David?
Yep. That is
Good.
the short.
Okay, that's it.
Yes.
That's how.
Okay.
Yeah, short answer.
This weekend, the Canned Hams, we have our Damn You Hollywood for Fan 4-stick. And then on Metal Hammer of Doom Sundays, we got Unleashed, Dawn of the Nine. The End of the Ring, The Return of the King. Next week, we will be, Damn You Hollywood will be back on its Monday time. We'll be looking at The Creator, which came out over the weekend, but we're going to wait till next week to review it. Because Saw took precedence. And then myself, Jesse Starcher, and David Wright, because David Wright is all over the month of October. We are looking at Good Omens Season 2, and Alexis will be reviewing Ahsoka Season 1, whatever it is. All right, that's what I got going on. Dave, I did your plugs for you. Ronnie, show us where you pissed from.
Pretty much.
Hey man, I used to have a podcast. It's called Screaming Boy Podcast, and it just recently got put back up on Apple. so you can listen to the old episodes that we have there. I was listening to a couple of them. They're not bad. I was a little rough on them in the past, but I think they're pretty good.
We also
there you
air
go
your
on
old
that.
episodes
I
here.
did that. Well, you do air my old episodes here. I apologize. I meant to tell. Yeah, totally boned that one. So you can listen to them here. You can listen to them on Apple. I did that in preparation of. I just started with a lovely, amazing group of players, a new campaign of Dungeons and Dragons, and it's based around the setting of Curse of Strahd in Ravenloft. You go to the land of Barovia to find out that it is taken over by a vicious, tyrannical vampire lord. And it's very like high fantasy meets gothic horror. And I figured October would be a good time to start it. We're recording the sessions, audio, and we're going to turn into an actual play podcast. And Curse of Strahd is it was one of the best written campaigns that is out there that Wizards of the Coast has put out for Dungeons and Dragons, and so everybody was excited to start this because there's a lot of things going on with it. There's a supplement out called Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, where we can go a little further outside the boundaries, and I have a group of 6 wonderful people that are wonderful players, and we just had our first session. So in the next couple of weeks, after we have a session or 2 more, I'm going to, I think, release the audio on podcast form.
Very cool. All right, folks, thanks for joining us here on our Legend of Vox Machina Season 2 review for David Wright and your Dungeon Master, Ronnie Adams. I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.